What's up, everyone? This is Serge with the Kings and Priests podcast. Today, we're going to do something a little bit different. I want to share with you some conversations I've been having and also some things the Lord has been showing me for the last few weeks. We're going to title this one, A Call to Shift Generations. And so, in times past, the Lord has talked to us about time and the governance of time, how He put the sun, moon, and stars on earth. But we are to govern that. He put man on earth to govern all of His creation. But sometimes we get it twisted and we say things like, oh, I don't have enough time, or oh, time's just slipping away. It's like, yeah, but you have governance over that. And we see it in the scriptures, with Elijah stopping the sun. And in the book of Revelation, it's describing the church, and it throws this in there, how there's no need for the sun or moon. Not that there isn't the sun or moon, but there's no need for it. And one of the layers to that is that he's talking about time. And he says, for the Lamb is its light. In other words, we are governed by a higher time schedule. That is the kingdom time. And kingdom time looks like this. What takes 1,000 years can take a day. What may take a day may take 1,000 years. It's as the Lord wills. And so we aren't governed by the time of the earth. We're governed by the time of the kingdom. We are to govern the time of the earth. And I don't know if you've heard me speak on this, but it's like this. We had a girl come in who I had been in contact with for, maybe 5 or 6 years. And I've seen her go from church to church and just get trashed because people couldn't understand her. She is very, very prophetic, very deep, very sensitive. And people would mistaken her as a witch or, just weird or just crazy stuff. She was abused over and over again. So when she came, I was like, okay, Lord, I do not want to be another one of those who hurts this woman. And I want to be sensitive. I need your wisdom. And I was sitting on that for about a week, and my white cat jumped in my lap. And in an instant, the Lord used that white cat to download like 10, 15, maybe even 20 years of wisdom on me within 10 seconds. And off of that 10 seconds, I wrote like pages of notes on how to deal with someone like this woman, how to cultivate it, how to give her a safe space, why people mistaking her, why the church sees these people and tried just all kinds of wisdom from top to bottom came in an instant. What took 20 years took 10 seconds. That's the time governance of the kingdom. It's not based on the time of the earth. And so that's going to allude into what the Lord's bringing forth in me right now. What He's starting to speak to me now is seasons and how we can shift generations in places they don't even have a grid for. How we can take the time governance that we have on this earth in the way of generations and pull what's meant for 40 years in the future, pull it into the now. And I started seeing how men did this in scripture, sometimes 1,000, 2,000, 3 years, pull it into the now for a purpose and intent to bring a disruption that is needed in the earth. One of them being Enoch. Enoch pulled something that was way beyond his lifetime, and he pulled it into his now. And he shifted generations. He brought generations to be mindful of some things that were coming. Moses was dealing with a generation who had no grid for freedom, generations in slavery. And Moses stepped in, allowed himself to think outside the box and be okay with it, which was huge. That is a huge statement right there, to allow ourselves. He allowed himself to just be open, hear from the Lord just a little bit, align his perspective with God's, and what a generation who had no grid for freedom, he pulled in to that generation the thought, the imagination, the desire for freedom. He pulled it into that generation and shifted generations to come. We see it with Elijah. Elijah was walking in stuff Jesus was walking in. No man had ever walked like Elijah, but he saw something and he pulled it in. He pulled what was a future way of walking in a new creation. He pulled it into his generation, and it disrupted things. It disrupted even regions of the earth. And then Jesus, of course, John the Baptist, of course, Paul, Peter, John, they all shifted generations by pulling in a grid that generation did not have a grid for. Jesus came at a time where it was jacked up, the darkest of the darkest times on earth. Jesus comes in and brings a disruption, brings a grid that generation did not have a grid for. And it brought a demand for change. There was no other way. There was no other way but a change to happen. There was no escaping the change. You either went down, hanging on to an old system, or you went with the change and allowed that change to explode just magnificent stuff in your life. And so he's been showing me this and showing me how we are invited into a place of pulling things that are not within the grid of our generation, pulling them into this generation, causing a disruption. And hear me when I say disruption, it's a good thing. It's a positive thing because it brings change. It demands change. It brings a whole generation to a higher place in alignment with the heart of God for his creation. And so he's shown me how we can pull those things in there, and every generation is to do that, but a lot of times we just want to stick with what we know, with what we've been taught, with how we've done things. And what it does, it literally keeps creation stuck. It doesn't allow us to build upon the apostles and prophets. We just stagnate on the floor that went before us, and it becomes antique and old and even worn out. We wear it out. And you hear people like saying things in church like, there's got to be more than this. There is, because we're sitting in a spot that's getting old and it's wearing out. But the kingdom is always progressing. That's what Jesus taught over and over and over again. The kingdom is like a seed, and it grows and it grows and it grows. But we think growth is bad. And I'm not talking about people. I'm talking about revelation. I'm talking about the mysteries of God. Are we allowing ourselves to go there? Are we willing to go there? Are we allowing ourselves to think this way, to meditate on these things? Are we open to allowing God to show us some things that may rock us and shake us? You know what I mean? And it's allowing yourself to go there. Allowing yourself to even go there when the church said, hey, I wouldn't go there. Oh, I wouldn't look into that. Oh, I wouldn't think about that. You ain't got to be afraid. He's got things to show you. Are you willing to go there? Are you willing to bring in a shift to a generation? Are you willing to bring this in? And these are the things the Lord's been showing me, that he's bringing forth things out of us, and has, that will shift generations. We're already seeing it. We are already seeing it with the end time stuff, man. That started a shift, man. I remember when we first started talking about this publicly, we got so much crap. And then all of a sudden, boom, it flipped and everybody started talking about it. It was coming from many angles. I could just speak to the angle that I was a part of. But it shifted things. We saw a shift from so much fighting to now everybody's talking about it. It went from, you never saw it on Facebook or a Facebook post. Now, every time somebody brings up end time stuff, when you go down and start reading the comments, somebody's going to bring it up. That was unheard of 5 years ago. And so there's a shift. It was birthed into a generation. There was no grid for it 5-6 years ago. Now it's on people's grid. Now it's common to hear this talk. It's common to hear rebuttals about end times teaching. But bringing a shift into a generation, bringing a disruption where, like brings something that was not in their face, not even on their grid, and brings it to the forefront, says, hey, we got to face this. We got to face this. Right now, it's the church. The church is being faced with its own. It's coming face to face with itself. It's looking in a mirror. It's come to a mirror. We've put up a mirror in front of it saying, look at yourself. It's ugly. It's gross. You've twisted everything to fit your narrative. This is not God. You've created your own image just like the Old Testament did. You've created your own image of God. It's man's image of who God is, and that is not good. Abandon your ways. Come on. There's a change coming, and you don't want to go down with that change. Jump on what God has for us. Jump on this change. Experience the benefits of this change. Don't experience the fall of a distorted image that you're looking at in the mirror. And we are partakers of that right there. That's what I hear the Lord saying. We get to be, and we have been, and we are. We're doing what we know. And we're breaking down those religious systems, those distorted religious systems is what I should say, in this area, in this region. And I'm going for the world, man. And so you're invited to bring this into your generation. But if you do, it's going to disrupt in a major way. Are you willing to do this? I'm in a place like that right now, bro. You have to do it. The Lord's inviting you into it. Yeah, but look what it's going to do. That's a good thing. When Jesus came, it disrupted a major distorted religion. Yes, it hurt a lot of people to see that system go down, but it had to, or all of mankind would be stuck. You have to take the invitation, step into that, and let the disruption happen. But at the same time, being sensitive and drawing those people to this change, man. And so here's some situations that have been popping up that the Lord's been showing me. So one of them is, I remember Napster came out, which Napster disrupted the music industry because it was, people just uploaded music and people would download it for free. And the industry went crazy, like, oh my goodness, this is devastating. And it started messing with the record sales of every artist. Because like, why pay for it if we can get it for free? And so this major upheaval happened. Lawsuits, everything. One of the big players of fighting this was Prince. And you know I love Prince. But Prince went after it. Like, no, this is disruptive. This is not right. And then all of a sudden, Prince has a complete flip. Because he saw this is not something to fight. This is something to partner with. The cat's out of the bag. This isn't changing. This has changed the entire industry of music. And if we think it's going to go backwards, we're crazy. So how do we use this? How do we jump on the bandwagon and ride the benefits of this? What are the benefits of this? How can we be the forerunners in this? And he was the first one to take the idea of online music and make a store and sell music. And next thing you know, it was a way for him to release music within its season. Because before then, if you made an album and you're tied to a record contract, it took a whole year for your album to come out. And that was an issue with him because he wanted to release it in its season. It's like, no, this song has a sound for now, not for a year later. It was never available to do that before, but now it is. And so he started using that for his advantage. And next thing you know, everybody started jumping on it. Then you end up with iTunes and, Spotify. You have all these streaming services, YouTube. You have all these streaming services now that allow music and people's message to get out in a very large way quickly within its season. That was never a thing before. And that disruption in the music industry demanded a change. And it wasn't going backwards. It demanded the industry to change with it. And I believe God was in that, to be honest with you, because of the season thing. And so you could either go down with the system or you could jump on the change, jump on the bandwagon and figure out what are the benefits of this. And so recently, as you know, I went out of town this week and it was for training on a laser welder. This laser welder is disrupting the welding industry in an enormous way. This laser welder takes the skill out of welding. Anybody can do it. I've never welded a day in my life except for my boss throwing me back there on a welder and saying, figure it out. And I was like 4 or 5 days on it and never could figure it out. Just a complete disaster. I show up to this training, 30 minutes. In 30 minutes, my first weld, the very first one, looked twice as good as the guy next to me who had been welding for 5 years, who went to school and had been welding every day for 5 years. My very first weld looked better than his. There was no skill in it. There's no skill in it. I just held the gun and let it do its thing. It's disrupting an industry. 5 years ago, this laser welder wasn't affordable. It was today, it's $10,000. Everybody can get one now. He said they started manufacturing these things just a few months ago, finally. And here we are today. He said, every time I get a load, I make a simple Facebook post and they're gone within days, no matter how big the load is. What I'm trying to say is it's bringing a disruption to an industry and it's demanding a change and it's not going backwards. Something that was not on the grid. He said this came out of left field, so much so that they don't even have regulations for it yet. The industry has not caught up to it yet. It's brought something to its face, something it didn't have a grid for. It brought it to its grid and said, here, we have pulled something from the future and we've brought it into the now. And it's causing a disruption for the better. But apply that to what we're doing. This is what the Lord is showing me, that this is what we are invited into as a community with the message that we bring and the way we bring it, how we articulate, all that. It's like, okay, Lord, give us the grid. We're willing to look at it. We are willing to go there. We are allowing ourselves to go beyond ourselves and look into this thing in order for you to show us what this looks like, because it doesn't look like what we've known. How do we articulate it? Because maybe it looks different than just YouTube videos. Maybe it looks different than just conferences. Look at Mayfest. Look at Oktoberfest. Look at the amount of people that are drawn into that. Why are we doing that in the kingdom? That's crazy. These are the things I think about. When we do something in the kingdom, it's just a bunch of everybody who thinks the same shows up. How do we break out of that? How do we do a Mayfest or an Oktoberfest where everybody shows up, no matter what you believe, and impact a community that way? How do we bring the gospel into that? What does that look like? I'm willing to think about this. I'm willing to say, Lord, birth some things in me. Show me. Let's bring a shift to what we're doing. And not that we don't need to encourage other believers, but there's another part of this too. So how do we shift that? Kings and Priests Podcast is a ministry of Urban Eden. To learn more about us, to get resources, and to find details on our monthly gatherings in Tulsa, Oklahoma, visit the website urbanedencmty.com. Connect with other like-minded believers from all over the earth by joining our online Facebook community group. Search for True Kingdom Community. And consider sowing a financial seed to help us spread the message of God's kingdom. Visit the website for details.